Welcome to the Heat Beat Podcast. I'm your host, Giancarlo Navas. And with me today is producer and co-founder Brian Goins. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see him on the bottom of the screen directly below.
Brian Winter says there's some big news coming to the NBA that he can't announce yet in the next coming weeks. I'm very curious to know what he's talking about.
We don't have time, Brian. We have time, Windy. On the bottom left, we have Alex Musibay.
There you go. Every pod, you're getting better.
I'm getting warmer. What's up, man? How's he doing? Thanks for coming on.
I like it, man. What's going on, guys? Windhorse really covering his bases there, giving himself a full 2-3 weeks just so he could say I had it first.
Listen, I had this guy. Listen, gotta cover your bases. And on the left-hand side with the camera off, our friend of the show, host of Locked On Heat, is our grumpy correspondent, David Ramil.
Grumpy? Is that the reputation? I mean, last time I was on here, I don't think I was particularly grumpy. I remember years ago when Alf called me a robot and a dick in the same episode, but nothing about particular grumpiness.
I feel like you're
he's called you worse things on
yeah, I feel like he's called you worse things. You're being kind to poor Alf here. No, David. David's a good guy. You got to check out his podcast, Locked On Heat. It's great. We miss Wes, but it's okay. David's holding down the fort. Actually,
Wes has been on so many times. What do you mean? He's basically a member of Locked On Heat again.
I know, it's good. David did a recent interview with Katie from Basketball News, and it came out really good about kind of the environment behind media coverage and of domestic assault, and it was really good. So check that out. I highly recommend it, and everything that David does throughout the season. So we have this meeting of the minds today.
Wait, I need to clarify something.
What?
Brian Windhorst actually didn't say 2 weeks. He said in the soon future, short-term future.
Oh my God, that could be anything.
More vague.
I actually prefer a couple weeks.
This is what he said on his Hoop Collective podcast. We know right now about significant NBA news that is going to probably happen in the short-term future that is going to alter things. But we can't talk about it for various reasons.
What does that mean?
Okay, great.
Alter what? Windy, alter what? Alter what?
Brian's question's a good one. Why can't you talk about it? If you're breaking news, whoa, you start hinting at these things.
Why can't you say it on his podcast, but he can't say on ESPN?
Yeah.
Tea leaves. Come on, Brian. What's going on? What alter what? It's crazy. This news reporting stuff.
Lay predicted on our DMs. I don't know if I should say this, but he thinks it's that Giannis is not signing his supermax.
Yeah.
But is that really league altering?
Yes.
And at this point, doesn't it kind of look that way? It shouldn't.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I feel like league altering would be like every NBA player is going to get their vaccine in the coming week.
It's gonna be some vaccine related news.
The hired Dr. Fauci.
Big get. The reason why we kind of call this meeting of the minds was because there's a lot of James Harden talk today. There's a lot of James Harden said the Heat are on his list. There's always a list, right? Now we have reached a state in the last 3 years of the NBA that there's always a list, and who's on the list, right? For Jimmy Butler, it was okay. The Heat are on the Jimmy Butler list. So are the Sixers, right? There's always a list, and the Heat are usually always on this list. It's a list. The Heat are perpetually always on this list, and of course, why wouldn't they be? It's an incredible city with no state tax. It's warm. Listen, it was 60 degrees today. It was wonderful. Anybody who lives here, it was great outside. It was amazing. I walked.
It was the perfect day.
It's incredible. There was sun and it's 60 degrees. It's like you get everything you want. It's incredible. Light breeze, especially by the water. We live in the best place on earth. So, why would a player not want to come here? Why would a young man who has lots of money not want to live here and live amongst, and in James Harden's case, some world-class strip clubs here in Miami that I'm sure that he would he would really funnel a lot into the strip club.
That he's helped bank.
Listen, he's out here to create an economy for Tootsies, and does Solid Gold still exists? I don't even know. I don't frequent strip club. Booby Trap, does that still exist? That's off the Palmetto, right? No.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're putting me on the spot here. I don't know. I've heard of these places. I'm not sure if they actually still exist.
And we kind of talked a little bit about it last episode that we did with Nikias and Frankie, kind of talking about the fit of James Harden and everything. And the thing I thought about, David, kind of going into today and a lot last night, it's what becomes too much if you're Miami to trade for James Harden? Now, probably, if you're looking and if you're thinking, there's not too much. He's a few former MVP. He's a walking 35 points. He's a top 3 MVP finisher every year in the league. Like nothing's too much. That guy is a cornerstone. He's a league altering player. He's in the first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to go in the echelons of the greatest players ever. He's broken so many records, and let his playoff blemishes be damned. I mean, if you have him, you're a contender, right? Like, but you have to have the conversation yourself. Well, I mean, do you gut the team for him, right, David? So, he in 2021, right? So, between him, Bam, and Jimmy Butler, they essentially take up the entire cap. If the cap's set at like 109, I think that comes out to like 108. And so you're pretty much entire team in 3 players is taking up your entire cap. So it's like, how much can you
do you have this conversation in 2010?
No, but I don't even think that his contracts have been so inflated now. And so what's happened is that like the cap, right? The cap has escalated like less than contracts have. So what happens is that you sign a deal that you think you're going to have cap space, and because the contracts have these kickers, or you're increasing 5 or 7% every year, that's really outpaced the rate of growth for the league. So what you happen is back in 2010, you can sign those 3 guys, and even if they take a little discount, you can still have access to things. And I know that they were still right up at the cap, but there was a lot more wiggle room that they can sign a Mike Miller and a Udonis Haslem, and they can still fill out the team, and they still had guys under contract. In a Harden trade, you theoretically have to give up Tyler Herro, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, and probably one of
true.
Theoretically, and picks, right? So it's like, at what point do you say we can't?
I wouldn't do that trade if it requires all that. Let's be honest.
So Brian's out on that.
Let's have the discussion like that is what the package is, because I personally think there's no way you get Harden.
Philly. No, but let's talk about like the teams that are really, like, we already know who's on his list. Philly's really the only team I think that could really challenge Miami if they include Ben Simmons in that trade offer. And for what I've seen, it doesn't look like Morey wants to even make a deal for any of Embiid or Simmons at this point.
What were you saying, Alex?
My thing is, I don't want to give away my entire, stance on this, but if you have to trade the house for Harden, Harden's not a guy that I feel comfortable trading the house for.
Crazy.
That's my stance.
You're crazy.
I can't give up everything I have for a 3-year window on a guy that I don't trust. We've seen him in the playoffs. I don't question that he's a hard worker
for the most part. I mean, I know he's had those bad games, but he's been to many more conference finals than Giannis has had, and he's the person that everybody is pretty much hammering, the table for.
He was some couple Trevor Ariza threes away from making the finals.
He basically was, a couple Trevor Ariza threes away from.
And he was a couple strip club nights away from winning a championship with OKC. I just don't trust this guy. I don't. And I'm not giving up Drip.
You're not giving up Tyler Herro?
Tyler Herro is.
Oh my God!
I can't do it, man.
Guys.
I've been trying to get this guy in Miami since he was in high school. I can't do this.
Overvaluing. Like, I think fans oftentimes overvalue their guys.
Talking about on the timeline.
I will trade Tyler Herro for the right guy.
You trade White Lou Williams for James Harden, and it's like, for me, it's not even a question. Like, David, I think it starts getting complicated if you start including every young player you have, including Duncan. Because you're gonna want the shooting, but like, I think I know that Leif of 5 on the Floor today, 5 Reasons, reported that the Heat have said that they're not gonna include Tyler Herro in any trade so far, and I think when rubber hits the road, David, if that's what it comes down to, they'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any discussion about it. Like, I mean, I'm probably higher on Tyler Herro than most Heat media and fandom, and at the same time, I think they'll make that move 100% of the time. Like, think back to 2004, people would have been complaining about trading Lamar Odom for Shaquille O'Neal, and that worked out pretty well. Even
people
though
still
the
do.
window was a lot shorter.
You mean
Ramos?
Coachy?
Yeah, Shaq was also a multiple champion at that point.
No, not in 2004. Yeah, okay, he'd been a multiple champion. I get it, but he was playing alongside Kobe Bryant. I mean, James has played alongside some great players, but I don't think they had the same kind of team, nor was the parity such in that point in time the way it is now. I think it's much more difficult to win a championship under these circumstances than it was during Shaq's era from 2000 2004. Either way, Harden is a game-changing player. I just don't see what the discussion is. You get him on here and you let everything else kind of figure itself out.
Thank you, David. Thank you. I think that we are overthinking this. We are getting too cute on NBA Twitter and on Heat Twitter. Like, you fucking get that guy with Jimmy and Bam. You're automatically the favorite in the Eastern Conference. I don't give a fuck. You have the three. You have the best trio
better than
in
the
league.
Lakers.
You're better. I think you're better than the Lakers. I think if they get James Harden, they are either the favorites or right there at second place. Like, this is no question about it. Like, you get a guy that's better than the two guys you have right now. Like, it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like, they have a guy in Jimmy Butler that just fucking played the best basketball that any of us have like maybe ever seen in a Heat uniform as he went up against the King. He fucking went basket for basket, did everything on the court imaginable, had one of the most incredible finals games ever. And they could bring a guy that's better than that.
And you save Jimmy's career too. Like, I mean, you're helping prolong it even more. He doesn't have to go through the same wear and tear that he did last season because now you have the best free throw rate in the league playing alongside him. So, I mean, you negate all the Lakers' size, you negate any wing defense that you could potentially come up with because you're going to put them on the line. This is the most powerful team. I think this might even be a better version of the Maybe that's overstating things a little bit too much.
Are you guys then punting on Giannis and going all in on Harden? Because I mean, that's ultimately what would happen.
What would you define as all in? Because my all in would be just trading Tyler. My whole preposition on making this deal is I really think they need to keep one of either Herro or Robinson just for shooting alone.
Well, I'll say this:
the person that would most likely stay is going to be Duncan. One, because he's up for an extension next year. His age, he's not as young to build a team around like what Houston's going to end up having to do with their rebuild. And then two, I just think as in terms of like, we're talking fit right now, I think Duncan makes the most sense than Tyler would be if we brought Harden onto the team.
I'm with you on that.
So Duncan, I imagine, Duncan's going to enter restricted free agency in 2021. And I imagine any kind of deal that he gets start with that Joe Harris number. And whether he wants to be team friendly or not, I'm pretty sure he's going to reject the qualifying offer. It would make sense, and he's just going to go into restricted free agency because somebody.
Qualifying offer is only like a few million.
It's ridiculous. It's
120. It's only 100. I mean, the Heat are going to give him a qualifying offer just so he can keep his cap hold on the books. You have to. He doesn't really have to accept anything. He just offer it, and once he offer it, that's how you can keep him so he can offer his bird rights and go over the cap.
So
I know G what you're trying to go with the whole like the Heat having to pay the luxury tax. Look, Mickey Rierson's been on record this year saying that he would pay for a contender if it meant bringing in a piece a la James Harden that would guarantee, NBA Finals appearances.
But it's not even the luxury tax so much that I'm talking about. So if you're with those three guys are at 108 of your 109 salary cap, theoretically, right? You sign a guy like Duncan, let's say he takes a $50 million deal. Then the luxury tax is at like 136. Now you have about maybe a little bit over $15 to $20 million to fill out your roster. And if you use over $5 million of your mid-level exception, you then get hard capped at about $6 million over the tax apron, right? So now you're really playing with it. Now you have four guys and you only have like less than $20 million ish to fill out the rest of your team, including you're going to get luxury tax and now you're hard cap. So you really don't have a lot of will. So I'm just thinking of, and then remember these contracts escalate. So Harden is 44, but that goes up to 47 the next year. Bam's goes up, Jimmy's goes up, and we don't even know what kind of accolades, if Bam gets all NBA first team, then all of a sudden you're really tight on money. And I guess I'm just projecting ahead as to like, okay, maybe next. I mean, and in that event, they can maybe trade Duncan Robinson, and I'm sure they can get, maybe they can trade.
I actually have some information on the hard cap. So if Miami makes a trade for James Harden, they would be considered. I'm assuming they would be a taxpayer team, just because I feel like they would keep the bird rights to. At that point, they would probably keep the bird rights to Dragic. They wouldn't let him go.
Yeah.
And they probably would accept some of the team options on the team. So that if they're our taxpayer team, they actually would have they would have a taxpayer mid-level exception that they could use that would not impose a hard cap. The one that you're talking about that imposes a hard cap is a non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which they would have if they have cap space.
So they'd fall.
It doesn't seem like that's what's going to be happening. Even if they go after Giannis, it seems like what they're going to do is accept the team options and use those contracts to make a sign and trade. If that's the deal, if they don't want to make the deal for Harden, they want to wait for free agency and make their pitch to Giannis, that would be their route. The only other way they could get hard capped would be either a sign and trade, so that Giannis move would be a hard cap move, or if they use their biannual exception, which they could technically use now, and they wouldn't be hard capped next year.
So, like, David, you're saying, like, who cares? I'm with you. You do what you have to. I'm just saying that. And I guess I brought up that Duncan thing because I think that if somebody said, well, the core of the trade has to be Herro and Duncan, or else we're not dealing. I think that if you look and say, well, this is a situation with Duncan, and this is his contract situation, this is the likelihood that you might be able to keep him beyond 1 year after signing him, that's where I say, well, maybe Duncan's not the deal breaker that I thought it would be. And I guess I kind of said that. I brought that up to set it up that way, that where I used to be like, you got to figure out a way to make this trade happen without Duncan. Now, I still think that, but now I'm less attached to the idea of keeping Duncan because I'm just scared that they wouldn't keep him for the duration of that contract.
He's going to be worth the contract that we're going to.
Oh, I think so too.
You got. What do you, I mean,
I
listen.
don't think we have to worry about the hard cap because I mean, you gotta trust Andy Ellisberg. I mean, he knows the number is right now. If they're having discussions like Leif's reporting that apparently they've had discussions with Houston to the point where they haven't, brought up Tyler Herro onto the trade block yet. I still think like they don't have to be hard capped next year. They can still be over luxury tax without being hard capped if one, they're not using a non-taxpayer mid-level. So basically the only other way they would be hard capped is whether or not they decide to use their biannual next year, which if that's the case, they can use it right now, keep that player. They can sign a multi-year deal to any player that's on the market right now or whoever gets bought out later on in the season. That would be a player that's on the roster. They could still go over luxury tax and keep. And then if they make a sign and trade, which doesn't seem like that's likely.
I'm in shock here, honestly. Like we're talking about Duncan fucking Robinson.
I'm with you, David.
Mean,
David,
I'm talking about Tyler Herro.
David, you and I
who cares about Tyler Herro or Duncan Robinson?
We're joint. David, we're attached by the hip. You and I'm glad that we have the same take. I saw you in a group chat, like not about the idea, and I'm happy about this change of heart.
I hate the conversation about trades because I made this point up in my show. Like it seems like a player.
Dehumanize.
Yeah, that one. And
David writes for Forbes, by the way.
I do write. I just can't speak.
He writes. He doesn't speak. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So in any case,
problems.
Yeah. So I get that. I hate talking about them like that, like as assets, quote unquote assets, because again, there's that factor. But to build a team, and you want to build a team that wins, you do it with James Harden. You don't do it with Duncan Robinson. You don't do it with Tyler Herro. None of those players, unfortunately, matter in that sense. You can add other players. You can figure it out. Like I looked at, who was available. Dwayne Dedmon, you can bring on Taj Gibson as the veteran presence to make up Andre Iguodala. Emmanuel Mudiay can fit into the schedule. You can kind of put him on the roster and develop him. And look, we're talking about Duncan Robinson, who last year we were having this conversation. We're like, is he even going to make the roster? Is he even going to contribute? We weren't sure. I remember doing a season preview with you guys last year. We didn't know what the hell to expect from Duncan Robinson.
No way.
Sure, he had a historically great year, but none of that matters. Like you bring up the kid they just signed. I don't even remember what the hell his name is. The guy who was like in the G League last year for Detroit or something. I don't know.
Strauss.
Yeah, the German name. Yeah.
Strauss.
Okay, whatever his name is. Yeah, you bring him in. You Gabe Vincent, like anybody, you can develop him. Like we had Wayne Ellington play all-star level basketball.
So fucking true. Wayne Ellington had the best shooting season in Heat history at the time.
What are we talking about? Duncan Robinson
did it during a pandemic.
Okay, but you're also naming at this point, you're also naming like NBA journeymen versus a kid that we just drafted in his first NBA season. The numbers that he's putting up, I don't trade away our future.
He's
like
not going to be an MVP.
3-year run.
He's just not going to be an MVP. He's just not.
He may not be. But did we know what Dwayne Wade was going to be like his second year? Like you don't know what these guys are yet.
I think we know that Harden is an MVP, and if we're talking about the upside, we know how good Harden is. Harden's a top 5, top 6 player in the league. Like, Harden's a guy that has proven to you that you can build an all-time great team around because he's done it.
This is all kind of mood, right? Like Pat, if you ask Pat right now,
he's doing
pull
it.
the trigger in a heartbeat. Yeah, absolutely.
The Tyler thing is just like, I think I understand the attachment that people have to him. I understand that he's your guy, that he's your homegrown guy. Whatever. I mean,
we don't have any more draft picks. This is like realistically.
For sure, after the Harden trade, they wouldn't.
Exactly. So, like, when I say you're trading your future, we're legitimately trading our future. Like, we're not going to get another crack at
you
that.
Just had
at that.
You had an argument about Duncan and Robinson. You didn't draft him.
In the garbage.
Again, I am arguing for Tyler. Duncan, get out of here.
They found Duncan. They found Duncan and Hassan in the garbage. Like, nobody wanted those guys. They just found them.
The draft is less valuable more than ever, I think, because you can start to see players that are going to drift into the second round, and then you sign them as undrafted free agents. Yeah. And you can do all sorts of things. You develop players, and I think the Heat would take a chance on their culture, their proven track record for the development, to just take any player and say, we'll figure it out. We'll build around the 3 guys that we have that are going to club people upside the head, and then you kind of figure out.
He's going to go clubbing for sure.
Yeah, well, for sure. But you're going to go figure out roster spots 4 through 17 later on after you get that big 3. I mean, I think they're again a title contender immediately.
Like, I think when we talk about the Heat and we talk about how much we trust the organization and stuff, I mean, it's like we trust them to find other guys that they can contribute through their G League, kind of system, throughout all these things. Like, I mentioned Duncan, I mentioned Hassan, I mentioned Tyler Johnson, right? Like, Josh Richardson was a 2nd round draft pick that, like, they have a knack for finding guys. Udonis Haslem undrafted. Like, this is just a historical kind of process for them of finding guys that fall through the cracks, to get guys to contribute, whether it's rehabilitation processes, which, I mean, Dion Waiters, we can make fun of him all he want. During 30 and 11, the dude was wrecking teams, hit the game winner over Golden State's with the arm crossed. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, they had James Johnson running point center and, like, confusing teams. This is James fucking Johnson. Who is that? They did that, they've done that consistently. And as David mentioned with Wayne Ellington, like, I don't doubt that they could just find some dudes, get them to contribute. Eric, if you believe Eric Spoelstra's the top 2 coach in the league, you believe that he's going to get the most out of guys, and you kind of figure out the rest. But, like, once you have the star power, like, and also that kind of makes you a little more injury proof, because one of those guys, you know what I mean? Like, if Bam goes down or if Jimmy goes down, well, now you still have Harden, Bam, and Goran and whatever else you have on your team. You know what I mean? Like, you have some insurance as to what happened to you in the finals last year, where Dragic and Bam goes down and you just have no recourse. You're just done. You're dead in the water. You're fighting this uphill battle against Goliath. And I trust the organization to figure it out. And I think that a lot of the conversations, it's either going to be, I don't want to get rid of Herro, I don't want to get rid of Duncan, this is too much, we just got Precious. I think that, obviously there's going to come a point where a deal's just too much, right? You just can't give up everything you have, which it'll get close to, because you need to match up to, what is it, $38 million, Brian?
I mean, $38 million, I already kind of played around the trade machine. It's going to require Andre Iguodala, Kelly Olynyk. Those are your 2 salary fillers. Most likely Kendrick Nunn would be in that deal, I assume. And then if you're including Tyler Herro, that's enough to make the deal.
Plus 25 and 27. And then swaps in 22, 24, and 26.
I've seen trade proposals where people have been including, like, PJ Tucker in the deal.
That gets harder to
now, if
work.
You're including him, it's going to require more contracts. I mean, technically, they could trade Myers Leonard if they needed to.
They have to wait 3 months, though.
As of February 6th, I think.
You gotta wait the 3 months. So, and I'm sure that they have some sort of handshake deal with Myers that,
Well, I don't think he would be in the deal anyway, but if they needed to, that's something they could do down the road. When do you guys think James Harden would get traded? That's actually a good discussion, because I haven't heard anything in terms of when he might get dealt. The season's about to start. Brian Windhorst is teasing like there's some groundbreaking news going on in the NBA.
Windhorst is just trying to cover his bases.
There's also on Bet Online, by the way. Shout out to Bet Online, our sponsor. They have, they just posted like their latest betting odds, and they have Miami as number 1 right now.
I just recorded a show with the host of Locked On Rockets, and his feeling is that the team is not going to trade him anytime soon. Like not that when the regular season starts, Harden will be on the Rockets roster.
Yeah, I think so too.
So it's going to take some time for them to figure it out. I think what his perspective was, and some other Houston folks I talked to, they said they are going to kind of drive up the price as much as possible and kind of wait. If the Sixers start off hot and they want to make a change, or if they start off badly and they want to make a change, things don't work out. If Doc doesn't, work out there the way they thought right away, or doesn't mesh with Ben Simmons, they'll facilitate the trade much more quickly. So they're going to kind of wait, and this is Rafael Stone's second major deal, I guess, if you count the Westbrook for Wall deal. But they also want to kind of keep Harden there and hope that they can kind of, work on his good graces a little bit and show that they're a contending team, or that they're still a solid team with some quality depth there, and that maybe they can kind of impress on him that this is still a team worth being a part of. And maybe that's a little too optimistic, but at least
trust me, that ship has sailed.
Yeah.
He knows. I mean, that's basically why he's putting out the trade proposal before the season started. Like, he knows he's done the most he can on that Houston team. They've maximized as much as they could do, and there's not much else they could bring on that team to help him win. They're
cooked. They have emptied their assets. They recovered a pick by trading Covington, but I mean it's tough. They have Wood, they have Harden, and they have Wall, who God knows what he's going to look like. I do want to talk a little bit about so we've talked about Philly, right? And if Philly wants to include Joel or Ben, that really changes the math. I know there were reports of Golden State kind of getting in that and then backed off, which Zach Lowe said, the asking price to Houston was astronomical. God knows what they were asking. But, I mean, if you look at a Golden State offer, they can give you James Wiseman, Wiggins, and that'll match the salary pretty easily. And then you have Minnesota's pick next year. Now, next year's draft is supposed to be like this super-duper draft, and Minnesota's obviously going to be bad. They're going to have probably a top 5 pick, and I think the protections are top 3.
I'll start mocking that draft next week, by the way. Make sure you guys look out for that.
Let's go. But I mean, that right, Alex? I mean, a lot about the draft. I mean, that's a good draft class.
No, listen, I'm listening to your trade offer right now, and I think that's pretty damn good. I'm
a big
offer,
Wiseman
you get fan
Wiggins
plus the pick.
A young player who, whatever. I mean, you just need the salary. It doesn't matter. You Wiggins and Wall. You have Wiseman. You have Minnesota's pick next year. So now you have probably one of the more valuable trade assets in the league. And
Absolutely.
Then, you have already Christian Wood. You have some young players that you spent money on and whatever. And then if it comes down to it, if Eric Paschall is the fucking deal breaker, then the Warriors could throw Eric Paschall, right? So you offer kind of, 3 young players plus incredibly valuable draft asset. And that's as good of an offer as I think anybody. I think Boston can absolutely get in the door. And we know Danny Ainge will never trade to make his team better, but theoretically,
I'm not worried about it.
Jaylen Brown plus Marcus Smart and stuff, I think, starts getting you into a conversation. Obviously, Philadelphia. I don't really know that Milwaukee has any kind of trade juice that can outdo Miami. I think that Brooklyn offers dog shit. I know that people really, Harden really wants to be in Brooklyn, but I just don't see a deal there. Like that poo-poo platter, the Karis LeVert poo-poo platter. Maybe Houston really likes Karis LeVert. I don't know. I'm not into that offer. So you kind of look around the league.
If they did, they would have made that move by now.
I think Toronto
I'm with Brian on that one.
Can theoretically make a deal, but I just think that they're so locked in on Giannis, especially that he hasn't signed yet. And I don't know if you guys saw yesterday. That was really funny that the day all that Giannis news came out yesterday about I'm worried working about myself and everything. The Raptors released that documentary clip where Masai Ujiri was in the war room the day of Giannis's draft day, and he was really trying to angle to get Giannis that draft. I think the Raptors had a pick that year. And so he kind of released that footage of that's the guy we've always wanted. So, I mean, they're locked in. I don't really see a lot of teams that might really be able to pull the trigger on that. And I think that really it's going to come down to Miami, Philadelphia. I think the Warriors can really get in on that. I don't really see the Mavericks having enough juice to really do something there. I mean, that would also.
They don't want to trade him out west, right? So that kind of eliminates the Warriors out of contention.
I don't know
if
that's
just going strictly off his list. It's Philly,
Milwaukee, allegedly.
I don't believe that. That's bullshit. I want to say something right now. I don't know if Harden's camp is leaking that because they just want leverage because that's a good team and they know that Milwaukee's desperate, or if it's Milwaukee leaking that to make them think that they're trying. I mean,
that's what I thought.
Don't remember that Harden said about Giannis
Yeah.
that it doesn't take
There's
skill
no-
to be 7 feet tall and dunk. He's like, I think Harden said, and I quote, I gotta actually play the game of basketball. Let's not forget that. That wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
That was just last season. So I don't think those dudes like each other. And like, look, you think James Harden put Milwaukee, Wisconsin on his list? It's not even the best city in Wisconsin. Shout out to Matt.
And let's talk about the irony that, first of all, these two MVPs don't like each other.
No.
And really, the question for Miami is, which MVP do you want to go after? Because that's really what it is.
What a great problem.
I mean, what a great problem. Yeah, but that's really what it comes down to. And then that's part of my hesitation for Harden, because I am more of an Antetokounmpo fan. And I do think that we have such a great chance at landing him in free agency. Granted, it's a roll of the dice. It's a risk that comes with free agency. But we've come this far. I want to follow through with the plan, and I want to see what could happen.
The thing is, and David, I kind of want to get you in on this too. Like with the Bam extension, that makes the Giannis signing really difficult. And if Milwaukee doesn't want to play ball with you with a sign and trade, you know, that gets complicated if Toronto and Dallas keep their cap open and all of a sudden, you know, they don't want to work with you and they say, fuck you, we're not helping you, you know, figure it out. You know what I mean? And they don't want to trade him within the conference and blah, blah, blah. Like, I think obviously a star can force his way wherever he wants. It just becomes a lot more complicated because of the Bam extension. So like, if you're going to punt, might as well be now.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think they kind of have to pivot a little bit. Even if he doesn't sign the extension, they're like, I actually floated this. I wonder if you think that there's any chance of this. What if you make the trade for Harden this year? You know, Giannis resigns or whatever, or he does a sign and trade next year, and then you trade Harden to Milwaukee in exchange for Antetokounmpo. Is that a possibility?
So fucking galaxy.
Let's
brain.
go!
That's so galaxy brain. That's so galaxy brain. Alex,
And we keep Tyler Herro? Oh my God, this is great. Let's do this.
that is too galaxy brain. I can't. There's no way. It's just like there's just no way they trade Jimmy. Not because like Jimmy's not worth Harden, but just like they're just never gonna trade. I mean, Jimmy's gonna retire. He's a lifer. And Bam off the table. Like Goran, I don't even think they would even. I mean, I think if fucking Houston was so in love with Goran Dragic and that was a deal breaker, I'm sure they'd do it. But I'm sure that it's not really like much of a discussion about including Goran in his nice chunky contract. It's funny because nobody's linked that contract, right? It's always been Olynyk, and it's been the other one.
Same thing. He just resigned, so you can't even trade him for 3 months, same as Myers.
Yeah. So I think that's really funny. I'm in on the Harden stuff. I think that if they can get that done mid-season, they become a contender. They become, I mean, they're already a contender, but they become a like legit favorite.
Yeah.
Right? They change from, you know, we're having the question, you know, can they get back to the Eastern Conference Finals? I think that's I think that's their goal. I think that's a legitimate, like reasonable goal. With Harden, it becomes, well, let's make the finals. And it's not even like anything less than that is a disappointment. Right, like he changes the math on your season.
To Alex's question, though, do you have a preference over Antetokounmpo or Harden, or like as far as fit on this team? Not just preference because that's more subjective, but like, do you think which one of those would be a better fit on this currently constructed team?
You know what
Thinking
I'm
hard
leaning towards now.
He's thinking hard. I mean,
I
talked a little bit with Nikias yesterday, and like, I think that people, when they think of Harden coming to Miami, they think it's going to be this giant different type of offense. It's largely going to be the same, right? Because Harden is Harden, and there is obviously going to be a lot more motion off ball, but it's still going to be similar stuff. It's going to be Harden kind of either bringing the ball up, or they're going to get Harden out of a pistol set to kind of initiate the offense. Or probably going to mix in some more handoffs with him and Bam. He's going to curl off. He's going to get that handoff. Bam's going to roll, and he's going to either be able to isolate if they switch, or he's going to have the lob threat and Bam going to the rim. Like they're going to operate pretty similarly to what he's always done. He's going to have a rim rolling target. He's going to be surrounded by shooters. I think the biggest difference is like, while PJ Tucker is always stationed in that corner, guy like Duncan is always relocating, right? And depending on who you trade, you know, it's going to really kind of affect the offense. But I think the Harden fit is really, really good. We went over this last podcast. Jimmy Butler as a screener is absolutely absurdly efficient. I mean, he's just getting to the teeth of the defense once he screens, especially if it's low. I mean, he can technically, theoretically screen for Harden coming off those pistol sets from the side. And if Jimmy's kind of darting to the rim as Harden's coming off that to get the ball, now, you know, it's a lot of issues for your defense because you have a guy who's not afraid of contact, going to the rim, who's really good finisher, who's really strong, who's forcing mismatches, and also a really good passer if you double him down there off Harden penetration. So it's interesting, and I think the Harden fit is so seamless, and I think Jimmy, a lot like Dwayne Wade, even though he's not a shooter, can work off the ball so efficiently that it almost doesn't matter. Like, I'm just saying on that.
I agree. I think it's a good fit. So, I mean, in that sense, then to your previous question, like maybe Antetokounmpo is still an option, but maybe you're not even pivoting so much as you're going over a preferred target. And yes, Antetokounmpo, in terms of age, might be better, to pair alongside Bam for the foreseeable future. But I mean, in terms of your immediate short window, and we think of Miami and Miami's front office almost always looking at the short term rather than the long term. And that's why they trade away all their draft picks as frequently, because it's all about the now. In that sense, maybe Harden is the preferred target. And that makes a lot more sense, because then you can compete for titles, not just this year, but next year and beyond that.
They're going to be, I mean, at least I think where the thing that gets me queasy, the only thing in the Harden thing that gets me queasy is when you start talking about his extension past his contract, right? And if you're going to have to max a guy his age, what are you going to do? And at that point, I think the second that, because Harden, for all the guys that have signed to Supermax, his deal's worth it. I mean, you can say all we want about Westbrook and Wall and Chris Paul and all these dudes, but his contract is very likely going to be worth every penny up until it ends. The question then becomes, what about after? The next contract, it's not going to be that way, because you're going to get some years on the back end of that where you're really not worth that juice. And at that point,
in South Beach.
And Jimmy's contract is going to be kind of it's the back end of Jimmy's career. And then you're going to have Bam's going to be in his prime, but you're trying to have all these bloated contracts with really probably one perennial all-star, if we're really kind of looking at that. And maybe James has a very graceful decline. He's not built on athleticism. It's very old man game. James has had old man game his whole career. Maybe it ages really wonderfully and he becomes this great shooter. Me as a great shooter, but you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I think that's where I start getting a little worried when we talk about kind of the future extension. And maybe David, I'm probably like way overthinking this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm so
win a title, you don't have to say you're sorry.
Yeah, I'm so brainwashed by the Heat organization that, to me, I've like aligned my priorities with how they've operated over the last 25 years of Pat Riley's tenure. Like, I don't give a damn about the draft. You trade away whoever you have to for the short term. You don't know what's going to happen in 3 years or what superstar is going to want to force a trade then. Like, it's all about the now in the NBA, because things can change so quickly. Look at last year, and all of a sudden the window opening up with that nobody expected, really. And then, the pandemic changes everything, and you have to force – you have to reapply new principles to how you operate as a team, as a franchise, with a salary cap in question, and so many other things that can fluctuate so quickly over the next year or two. So why bother projecting 5 years out as far as who we're going to draft in 2027 and say, you know what? I could get an MVP right now for the next couple of years and probably win a couple of championships, and that works out. Am I crazy here? Am I crazy?
I agree. I don't think Pat Riley's in it for 2027.
Yeah, he's not.
No way. I mean,
no.
Who knows
David,
if we're even alive as a
point.
species?
Who knows if Miami's even going to be a city anymore?
I mean, we're going to be underwater in 2027. Let me tell you. I mean, the way I work in civil engineering. Woof. We're doing some projects in Miami
the player
Beach.
that has gills, he's probably going to be on Miami's radar in 2027.
Yeah, listen.
Technically, Harden
I'll
would be
be
a whale,
all over
right?
that.
His upside is, he can breathe underwater, and that's really big in this coming NBA draft. The ability to
what's
breathe
his wingspan?
What's his what?
Isn't that why Riley wants whales?
Orcas.
All right, and I'm out. Thanks. Thanks, guys.
That's